to mend our relationship to rest, because oftentimes the relationship we have with it is one that we've inherited, not one we created with it ourselves.
I'm really interested in us, like me and you, two Black women, being like, where were there? We were seeing people take moments of restoration. Then I thought about Miss Mamie's hair shop on Saturday mornings, and the women I saw with their eyes closed under the dryer. And I was like, well, who told me that doesn't count?
Hey, love, come in. Put your back down. So if we're honest, most of us don't know how to rest. Not because we don't want to, but because rest doesn't feel like rest. Rest feels like guilt. It feels like you've forgotten something. It feels like you're being lazy. It feels like you're about to get in trouble. Like if you stop moving, everything's going to fall apart. And if that sounds a little dramatic, welcome. You're in good company. Because for a lot of us, especially the strong friend, the high achiever, the one who holds it down, rest isn't a spa day. Rest is a whole nervous system negotiation. Rest is learning how to be in our bodies without bracing. It's unlearning the idea that we have to earn our exhale. And so today we're talking about how to do rest, not take a vacation one day, not sleep when you're dead. I mean, right now in real life, when you have deadlines, when you have people who need you, and you have a brain that won't stop making to-do lists, even when you're in the shower. So if you've ever sat down and immediately felt anxious, if calm feels unfamiliar, and if chaos, if we're being honest, is your default setting, this episode is for you. And joining us to help us figure this whole thing out, including myself, is a true leader and trailblazer in the rest revolution, Octavia Raheem. She says she's a rest coach, but I'm telling you, she is a rest guide. She is a rest angel. She is... You'll find out in a minute. She's also a writer and the founder of Starshine and Clay, a rest-centered practice offering yoga nidra and restorative support for people craving a softer way to live. She is the author of Pause, Rest, Be, Stillness Practices for Courage in Times of Change, and Rest is Sacred. Her work invites us to stop performing our way through life and start building the kind of rest that regulates the nervous system, restores the spirit, and holds us through seasons of change. You all are in for such a treat with the one and only Octavia F. Raheem. The last 2 weeks have been so full of kindness and care and love and reminders of God about the promise that was given to me and remembering to believe and what true surrender and faith looks like. God just keeps putting these people in my life and bringing these experiences and these moments. And it's just, I am so deeply honored and overwhelmingly tickled by how I just keep getting to have these moments with really amazing people, and how those moments also get to be shared out with others. And you are truly one of my favorite people.
Thank you.
You are. I have fangirled you for years. So you are actually one of my favorite people in the world. Thank you for doing what you do. Thank you for being who you are. Thank you for actively practicing the thing that you are preaching to us, because you truly do feel like a soft landing, like a calm space, like a peaceful space. And I know that requires work. So thank you for doing the work for us to have the pause.
Thank you for seeing me. Thank you. What I was going to say is it feels wild to talk about something. It's like talking about walking when we could be walking and talking. You know? And so for me, from the jump, it's like, how can we invite people to engage something I call restorative listening, which is like listening not to extract, not necessarily to learn, to listen to and be aware of like how the words are landing on your ear, on your body, my tone, your tone, like that. Meaning like most of the time we're listening, gotta get something down, gotta make it mean something, or have to do something with the information I'm hearing. As in like go engage a task. Here is do nothing. Listen. Listen in 3-minute increments and then pause, like, and so what I'm just kind of stumbling through, thinking through out loud with you right now is like, yes, I want to lead a kind of structured rest practice because folks is tired. It is tiring out here always. And, it's a lot. But how can we invite people to listen in a
Mm.
way that can be restful for them? I think one of the questions is around like, why are people not resting? Is so layered. And then I don't have the answer to why you aren't resting. Hearing this and hearing someone to ask themselves, why aren't you resting, sweetheart? With a lot of compassion and tenderness, now we can get to some answers. Like I can kind of pontificate about what I think it is, but I like to ask people if you can name that you're tired. Then what do you know about why you're not resting? And I mean, we not asking the question to judge. We trying to get to what's the heart of the heart, what's actually going on with you. You know what I'm saying? And so that's the other thing. Is like, I know that's going to be one of the questions. I can talk about why I wasn't resting or what gets in the way of my rest. I think the real juice is for people to be able to listen to this and start to have a conversation with themselves about their relationship to rest.
Well, let me ask you this. What questions should people be asking themselves so they can start engaging around their relationship to rest?
Oh, yeah, that's a good one. It was very useful to me to start to think about, like, well, who taught me about rest? But also, what did I learn about work? What do I believe about rest? What do I believe about work? What do I believe about the relationship between the two? Because sometimes people go, there ain't no relationship. And I'm like, well, physiologically speaking, there is, like they are not always playing harmoniously. And where there's work, there must be rest. And where there's rest, we need some motion and some work as well. What part of me is most in need of rest? Is one of my favorite questions to ask because sometimes we can be really invigorated and inspired and have a lot of energy in one way, like, socially or spiritually, and this is some of Dr. Saundra Dalton's work around the 7 types of rest. She's exceptional body of work there. And then also, I'm an IFS, internal family systems trained coach. I am not a therapist. I have some coaching training. And before even I had that training, I was always asking people what part of you is most in need of rest because folks would come in and it might be, oh, the leader, oh, my brain, oh, my mind, my shoulder, like just to help. Because sometimes it's like I said, we aren't just completely depleted. And I feel like it's important to name that as well. And then I encourage people when they go, well, Octavia, every part is in need of rest. And I go, the key word there is most in need.
Mm.
Because when we start to refine our focus, it starts to feel more like, oh, maybe I can do something about that. If it's everything is, and it could be, you might just be like, it is, yeah, that's very overwhelming.
So what would you say? Because even as you're naming the piece around what part of you is in most need of rest, even in that question, there is well, let me figure out what part. And for most people, to what you just named, was they say all of me because they don't know how to pause long enough to check in to see
Yeah,
what
that's right.
part. So what would you offer before that, like the pre-question to that
Yeah,
question?
so the
How do you check in?
pre-question isn't a prerequisite to rest is slow down by 1%. And then if we go, well, what is 1%? Like, I think all of that to me registers as just resistance. Like the hyper, like let me ask a question of the question of the question and let me quantify precisely what 1% is. Yeah, like and we can recognize like survival pattern, like that's useful in some place. Might it be useful in it to engage with yourself that way? Maybe, maybe not. But for me, I'm like, We don't just go, if you're moving 100 miles per hour and you just hit the brakes really hard, you know what that feels like? That's jarring, and people who are like moving and living at an extremely fast clip, going straight to the stillness of rest, the body and brain goes, something's not right here. It registers actually as high alert, high alarm. And so one of my primary teachings in the beginning with people is, can you slow down? Even before we slow down, notice your pace. Just to notice your pace. You ever start noticing, like if you start noticing, you could do this right now. Notice the rhythm of your breath, the pace of your breath, and how where you place your attention and awareness, it might speed up. Usually it actually slows down. So that is like the first step, like notice your actual rhythm. Step one. Step two, can you slow down by 1%, not 25, definitely not 100. Like we're just slowing down, like just a little tiny bit. Like for me, I have a 9-year-old, and he, for all this meditating and resting and the stuff I do, this boy can press all my buttons, and all of that goes out the window. And sometimes when I'm like, I don't know why you can't get in the car fast enough, child. Like, like we have a real place to be called school. What I'm saying is, then I go, well, what happens if I slow down by 1%? Because in that moment when I'm turning up, mama's turning up, trying to be like, bring it all the way down. It actually makes me crash out more. And it's not just me. That's just how the brain and nervous system work. So, okay, see how we're moving. Pay attention to that clip. Can we slow down by 1%? Maybe that one can be 2 or 3. But then ultimately, the prerequisite to rest is, do you have a relationship with the pause? There is a pause between every word we speak. Even us kind of, well, I talk country, so we have a drawl. Like we drag words out, but I have friends from Philly, and I'm like, woo, well, do y'all actually have a shout out to the Philly people, but you know what I mean? But even, no matter how fast we talk, there is a pause between each word. There's a pause between each breath. If you open a door, pause, like there's a pause between there's a pause everywhere. We could do that practice. Then the real practice becomes, can I remember to pay attention to the pace at which I'm moving? Can I remember to slow down by 1%? And then can I just notice once a day, twice a day, 3 times a day, the pause between my inhale, my exhale, pause between my breath. And then we can get to a question.
Here we go.
I remember, sometimes I don't remember. I remember that's where we started. Then we can get to a question of like, so what part of me, because sometimes people have enough awareness to go, I'm really tired.
Right.
I'm just tired. Okay, then you go, well, what's tired? What part of me is tired? What part of me is most tired? Most people they might start there. I'm tired. I also like, we can give it more context. Sometimes I go, what layer of identity is most tired? Because sometimes it's like the partner, the friend, the daughter, the mother, the leader, the one who always has to have the answer, the author, and it could be like these really beloved roles that we're devoted to, and we still get tired, of being in the suit of that role.
Right.
Yeah.
Octavia. I so deeply appreciate this is where you started, even as someone who's my own, like, all right, we got to do a podcast, and recovering perfectionist and all the things. I'm like, all right, I got to do an intro. We got to do this. I'm like, or you just let it be. You let it flow. You lean into it. And when you name like what part of you is tired, and someone would say all of me, and it's like, okay, well, what identity do you have that is tired? And I think just parsing those two pieces out, just those questions alone could be what takes up an entire day for someone. Because so often, and we've seen this a lot, and I know you've seen it, this like rest almost becomes, it turns into a report card, right? Like, or healing in and of itself, like healing has become commodified. To heal, these are the 19 steps I need to take, or these are the things that I need to do, or this is how I need to show up, and I need to do the shadow work, and I need to talk to my inner child and my outer child and my old parents and my new self and my generational curses, and I gotta break them. I'm tired thinking about all the healing. And that's not what healing is
No.
meant to do. We have turned it into something else to do versus a way of being. And I think rest gets folded into that. And when I was saying earlier, like I realized I was doing a thing because of my relationship to stillness. And so it hit me earlier today, oh, I procrastinate so I can have something to do later. So I can have something to be anxious about later. And so I spend this time in the anxiety and the overthinking, but I still have to do the work later because it always is giving me something to do versus me being comfortable and the stillness of nothing. I finished everything on my to-do list yesterday and felt so uncomfortable. I was like, there has to be something else. There has to be more. And there isn't. And so even in that moment, realizing, oh, you're not comfortable in completion. In the same way you're not comfortable with something being incomplete, you're not comfortable when it's complete because you're not comfortable in the being and the stillness of it. Where did that come from? And so, that went down a whole rabbit hole of a thing. But I appreciate that you named what you named around that, because so many people listening to this will try to figure out, okay, so what do I need to do? How do I need to fix it? How do I need to make it better? And it is not something to fix. It is something to have a relationship with.
Yeah. It's like, I'm like, rest is it's a beautiful relationship to be in, because rest doesn't ask us for anything. Rest just says, come here and be. And honey, some of us, I can raise my hand on this, looking over my shoulder, like, but what you gonna take? What do you want? Like the hypervigilance kicks in. Like there has to be some trade-off here.
Right.
And rest is a practice. Rest is refuge. Rest is sacred. We can access revelation. And rest is all of these things. And what we need to do to access it is be willing to be in a relationship with it. And that, like, relationships don't require us to be perfect.
Yeah.
They require us to show up and have some curiosity. That's what I'll say about that.
I think you're even exercising it in real time. We're hearing you pause between the words, even as you're sharing with us. And what comes up for so many people is rest sounds good in an ideal, right? And even as you're saying, like, rest is a relationship. And often rest doesn't feel safe.
That's right.
And so for people where, like, rest doesn't even feel, let's not even to the space of, like, rest doesn't feel achievable. Rest doesn't feel doable because I'm a single mom, or I have all these titles or all these labels, and you already kind of spoke to that a little bit. But when we start to unpack that and we realize rest actually doesn't feel safe, so we actually are resisting rest, and we're asking all the questions and we're doing all these things because it doesn't feel safe.
Yeah.
What do we do to mend our relationship to rest? Because oftentimes the relationship we have with it is one that we've inherited, not one we created with it ourselves. So what do we do to build that?
It is long and storied, right?
Yeah.
And where to enter this question for me? I honor everything you just said. And I grew up, my mama had a prayer closet, and she would go in that prayer closet. She'd close her door and then go in the prayer closet and then close that door. And we knew we bet not.
Bet
touch it.
not.
Like, and so I'm saying that to say, because I have a mastermind called Devoted to Rest, where it is like, there are masterminds for everything. I'm like, well, let's go on a deep journey of our relationship to rest and then embodying rest and being in relationship to rest and interrogating relationship to rest and work. That's what we do in there. And I'm on cohort 7, and the first few cohorts, we go, who taught you about rest? And also is for people who self-identify as Black, Indigenous,
Mhm.
women of color, non-binary folks. So I have this question, who taught you about rest? And for a couple years, everyone was saying, no, nobody, nobody. And then I do the practices too. And I was all in there talking about nobody. Shot it. I laid down one day and I'm going back and forth. Should I say this out loud? But I felt the presence of my people, of my mother, of my grandmother, of people whose names I do not know. And they said, you're going to stop lying on us. That's not all that we were. And what I'm saying is, my mama had a praying closet.
Mhm.
That was her pausing. That was her shutting doors is external world. You don't get me right now, including my 2 daughters that I'm raising alone. And what I'm saying is that my own conditioning had not allowed me to see and count the practices that live in my lineage and in my tradition that are rest practices. It might not be meditation. I teach meditation, yoga nidra, restorative yoga. I teach really specific structured practices that have their own lineages related to rest. And so from that moment where I had this flash of memory and this insight to connect that dot that, my mama was both exhausted and she knew how to step outside this unsustainable and destructive rhythm and save herself through her prayer closet. Then I just started to be like, wait, where else did those moments of people saying, that belongs to me, I belong to me, that's my time, where does that exist? So, what I'm saying is, that's one part of the story. There's a dialectic here. There's the both and where it's like, do we have models? Who's been resting? Can I rest? I didn't see it. What were you looking for? What are we looking for? I still go to church, and I noticed the pauses that are built in there. I'm like, look at this. There are hundreds of us in here, and we didn't lay down and take a nap, but we did take a breath together. This singing is not necessarily a rest practice, it is a restorative practice. So, like there's the deficit model or the asset model. And I'm like, well, I'm really interested in us, like me and you, 2 Black women, being like, where were there? We were seeing people take moments of restoration. Then I thought about Miss Mamie's hair shop on Saturday mornings and the women I saw with their eyes closed under the dryer. And I was like, well, who told me that doesn't count? That's
Right.
not a worthy rest practice, that person wasn't operating with a sense of both individual and collective and communal care up under the dryer. So that's what I'm first going to say is that I also do invite people to look because it's so easy to be like, I'm not doing it right. I'm just out here spinning out. And people might already have a ritual in place where they get in their car, they listen to their favorite song, and they go a little bit slower when they're listening to that. First, people have to count what they're already doing as like I am taking care. I am doing what I can. We do inherit a treasure trove and a whole Pandora's, but we inherit so many things. And we learn so many things, and there's so much conditioning. And I don't have like the empirical evidence to support this. I'm going to say it anyway that I'm like, if someone in your lineage rested, we wouldn't be having this conversation otherwise.
This part. Right. They had something had
I'm
to
like, I
happen.
am not making this stuff up. I always say my last book, Rest is Sacred. I said to a friend, I was like, it feels like an ancestor. And then I was like, that sounds poetic, but I was like, how
Mhm.
do I have access to that wisdom? What else is propelling me forward and along and down this path? What called me back to this portal of
Mm.
rest as a sacred practice for us. I'm not making this up, so that's part of it. And then this means a lot to me to be talking to you and whoever's going to listen. I said a prayer. I was like, Lord, let just the listening restore something within them.
Mm,
Like let them remember who they are like that. There's part of our narrative is this one thing. That's not the whole thing. That's not the whole story. That ain't even the half the story,
right.
and so as I was thinking about today, a few things came in mind. And one was lift every voice and sing. God of our weary years, God of our silent tears just kept quickening in my spirit. And I was like, well, I'm going to say that out loud. And then one of my favorite scriptures is Psalms 46:10, be still and know. There's so much, if that's a tradition you follow in that Bible, that speaks to, there is some scriptures around work. There's some scriptures around rest and stillness too, because we live in the world of the both and that's being. And I'm saying that to say that the line, God of our weary years, feels like it holds like the whole tradition. Like we tired, and there's a divine that said rest is a part, gets to be a part of this for you too.
The thing I was asking was like, we feel like we don't feel safe when it comes to rest. And the thing that you named in that beautiful response was, one, part of why we don't feel safe in rest is because we are not in our own relationship with rest. We are trying to be in relationship with what people have told us rest looks like.
Yeah.
And that means we're not tapping into what it actually means for us or for our ancestors and people before us. And we have seen rest look a certain way on people. For my mama, it was she would come in from work and be like, I need 15 minutes, don't nobody talk to me.
I mean, come on, that.
Oh.
Yes,
and
Mama.
You would be mad. You'd be like, Mama, what's that about? And then I became an adult. And the way my favorite time of day was getting home, turning off the car and sitting in silence in the car for about 10 to 15. I fell asleep sometimes. Like that is a rest practice. And to your invitation, I don't know if you realized it was an invitation, but it was an invitation to start seeing where the pauses are in the world that we already take. It's the deep exhale before you get ready to get on that call at work that you don't want to be on with that person. That is a rest moment. It's the holding someone extra tight and taking that inhale with them. It's the smelling of the food before you eat it. It's the, oh, that's my song. And just take, like, those are all rest practices. And so even shifting how we're thinking about, I don't rest enough because, to what you were saying earlier, my body feels tired. Our body feels tired because we might need to do it more, but it doesn't mean we are not doing it at all. So giving ourselves some grace and some love, redefining our relationship to rest so it doesn't feel unsafe. It just may feel like a partner we may have neglected a little, but they've always been there. And they're like, you ready to come back? I'm ready. Yes. Okay, baby, come on.
That's beautiful. Yeah. Because that's the other thing. I'm like, once I was on a podcast and someone said, you button up a lot of meaning into the singular word of rest. They're like, you put this in that. And I'm like, well, I want to encourage people to make it their own and what they need it to be, and then like just the general definition I'm working with is less stimulus, pay attention. Less stimulus and pay attention. And I'm like, we can get real fancy from there. That's where we need to start, though.
But that's where we start.
Yeah. And it's so important for people to give themselves grace. And we don't need another thing to be like, I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it right.
Exactly. We don't need another thing to feel guilty or feel bad about. And that's not what rest is meant to be. A loving partner never makes you feel guilty. And it's supposed to be a loving partner. Not even supposed to, because then that still gives it. It gets to be a loving partner. So with that being said, low stimulation. What'd you say? Low, what did you call it?
Like less stimulation.
Less stimulation.
And pay attention.
Less stimulation, pay attention. So what we're about to do, because I would be remiss if we didn't actually get into a rest practice with you, would you please do something with all of us?
Yeah.
to reduce our stimulation and pay attention. Something we can take with us.
Yes. I love that. So people might be driving. And that's me saying, if you're driving, you're going to pause. Not pause, you're driving. Come back to this, right? Um, and otherwise, we'll start where we started, which is notice your rhythm. And if you're not really moving right now, you can notice the rhythm of your breath. Notice the pace of your breath. And then I like to invite people to just orient to where they are, to look around, take in, right? Just paying attention, take in where you are. Try not to notice the little dust bunny in the corner and let that distract you. And, you could do those two things and you might get a lot out of it. Just let me notice my pace because noticing is going to shift you down a little bit, like you're going to slow down a little bit. And then looking around to see where you actually are. You know how often we're not even noticing where we are and taking it in. And then my next invitation is to be aware of the support beneath you. I know the chair. This is Lamarad Owens. I was taking a meditation class with him, and he said, "Let the chair do the work of the chair." And I thought it was the most perfect instruction. Because how many of us sit on the edge of our chair, like we got to hold the chair up, or like the chair is gonna buckle under our weight? It feels like that in the world, though, right? Like we are the one that holds. We keep the thing steady. And so sometimes we're not even giving our full weight to the surface we're sitting on. It is a restorative practice just to notice the chair and sit there. And then if there's support at your back, notice that. And now we can get to, I like to ask questions. The first question is to ask yourself on the inside, hey, however you talk to you, I hope it's with love and kindness, a little bit of sass and care. How are you? Like check in with yourself. How are you right now? And there's no wrong answer, right? Asking the question, again, this is restorative for us. We're often checking on everybody else and haven't asked ourselves the simple yet profound question, how are you? So we're not answering it aloud. You're just asking yourself, how are you? And maybe some friendly recognition, like I see you, I'm here with you and for you. And then my next question is to ask yourself, what else do I need right now? And it's perfect, right? Because I'm looking at you, Ashanté, and you started rocking. Yeah. And so it is when I'm leading a retreat, I like to go, okay, y'all, I'm going to teach y'all a really ancient, this deep and profound restorative practice. And everyone leans in like, what she gonna do? you know? And we start rocking because, so I'm going to rock with you, right? When I asked myself, what do I need if I'm going to be moving into more stillness? I actually heard that I need to move. I'm not going to resist what I heard as much as I can. I'm going to honor it and give myself the answer to what I need. I need some movement. And then the other thing is, whose granny didn't rock? Who hasn't, had a baby or a niece or a nephew or a child, maybe even a puppy that needs some settling, and you gather that little being up in your arms and you start to rock, and that is very soothing for the nervous system to rock. And so sometimes to get to the stillness and the body being able to accept a little bit more stillness, we have to move it. Yeah. So what have we done? We've already engaged a few practices that I think people can take a part of or string together and make it be something, which is to look around, see where they are, to be aware of the support beneath them. I think actually we started by noticing your natural rhythm and pace, how you breathing, how are you moving? Maybe slow down by 1%, asking yourself, how am I really? Acknowledging yourself. And then asking yourself, what do I need? What else do I need? And then me and you just started rocking a little bit because who doesn't want to rock? I'm going to invite you to open your arms wide or as wide as it feels comfortable, right? You don't have to strain, right? Notice the impulse to strain, right? So as wide as feels comfortable, which is like maybe a novel idea. And then just wrap your arms around yourself and you can keep rocking. I mean, how does that feel?
That's actually really nice.
Isn't that nice? That's what I mean.
Really
Like,
nice.
we probably can't bust this one out in the middle of a meeting, but like in between when you're by yourself, because still, this is just 3 minutes. And then if we can slow the rocking down, and if it feels okay to stop, you stop. And then notice we just slowed down, paid attention, zoomed in a little bit, rocked. How you feeling?
Slower,
Yeah.
which is good.
It is good. And the second part would be if it feels okay and you're in a place where you can do so to let your eyelids get heavy and close or just soften your gaze. Or if people are looking at this at home, like on a screen, to just look away from the screen so you can rest your eyes. And it might be that the movement wants to come back, or it might be that you can move slower or get still. These words are still on my heart, so I'm going to repeat them. God of our weary years and God of our silent tears. The one who said, be still and know. Let us remember you were talking to us. That rest is part of our divine birthright, even when we can't seem to remember. Be aware again of the support beneath you. If you're sitting in a chair, be aware of the support at your back. And now we can turn our awareness a little bit more inward by noticing the breath. Feel the touch of the inhalation as it graces the nostrils. That's a real sensation, right? Sometimes we want to pop up into the brain and think about the sensation of breathing when we can actually feel it, especially if we focus on the nostrils. So, what are we doing now? It looks like nothing on the surface. One of my teachers and mentors, brilliant luminary and Black psychologist, Dr. Gail Parker, often says just because we're doing nothing doesn't mean nothing's happening. The happening is on the inside. So we're just noticing the inhale, noticing the exhale. And then maybe if this feels right for you, just start to count the breath down and backward, starting with the number 10. And I'll get us started. So you'll inhale and say silently 10 or think 10, exhale 10. Inhale 9, exhale 9. Inhale 8, exhale 8. And you just keep going that way. If your mind is like mine, you'll start thinking about dinner or the grocery list and then go, what number was I on? If that happens to you, you just go back to 10 or you just let it go and go, I'm just pay attention to my breath right now. And then together we can receive a full breath in. And if it feels right, exhale with a sigh. And we let the counting go. And we'll just do that 2 more times. Breathe in together, in through the nose. Receive the gift of the inhalation. Exhale with a sigh. And one more time, we can do that. We breathe in, we breathe in. The edge of that fullness, be with it, and then exhale with a sigh. Yeah. And that is, that's just all I'm talking about. That's all I want for us.
Consider it accomplished because you are always a blessing to me. And on behalf of everyone who has heard this today, who will replay it, those that are driving, that will then put a pause and put this back in later, those of us that need to be reminded of it probably in another 15 minutes. Thank you, Octavia. Thank you for this conversation. Thank you for helping us to not turn rest into homework or a plan or a checklist or a way to get better at being human. Thank you for reminding us that rest is not a reward for finishing everything. It's not something you earn by suffering enough, but that it's a relationship, something that we practice, something that we return to, something that we learn to trust again. And for reminding us that small is not pointless. Small is how we begin. And we're allowed to rest while we are still becoming.